And I believe we're live. Hi, welcome to the Stream of David Live. This is a special TYA Talk Thursday edition. We're actually on all of our channels right now, not just in the Facebook group. So this is a little special edition I'm doing with my good friend, Andrea St. Amand. Hi, Andrea.
Hi, David.
How are you?
I'm great. I'm super excited to be here.
I'm getting an error message there that I'm trying to fix. There we go. Okay, cool. All right. So we are going to do something really, really unusual. I'm very excited about this because if you know me, I am a channel. Some people call me a trance channel. Not even sure what all this stuff means. I just know that I sort of go away, they sort of come through, and then I speak source. So that's about as simple as it is. And I do that on here all the time on the show and all the places that you're watching. And my friend Andrea is an evidential psychic medium. And I'm going to turn it over to you and let you tell them exactly what that is.
Yeah, so it's a little bit different from what David does. So David, as you all know, if you've been watching him, he speaks almost in first person, right? He's speaking like as the stream comes in, he's speaking not as David. When I'm giving a reading, I'm having a conversation with a discarnate soul. So let's pretend David's grandma came in and David would be my client. And I would say, David, I have your grandmother here. I would start giving evidence of his grandmother. And then I would start talking to grandma, and then I would relay the conversation that I was having with grandma to David. And I would say, your grandmother is saying blah, blah, blah. Your grandmother is saying this. Your grandmother wants to talk to you about the car you just bought. You know, it's a lemon, and she knows because she was a mechanic in World War II. Like, I would start getting that information. David would, please tell me your grandma wasn't actually a mechanic.
Yeah, she wasn't. I think she. I think she worked in a bra factory.
She worked in a factory though, but that's how that would work. So it's a little bit, it's different than what David does. I'm literally a medium between two worlds. So I'm giving what I'm hearing, seeing, feeling, and relaying it to David. And in that way, both of us are the voice of the voiceless. We're just doing it in two different ways. And that's not my phrase. My teacher always says that. We're being the voice of the voiceless, which I really like that. We just do it in different ways.
Yeah, and you're tapping into specific strands of consciousness as they are attached to a living human being.
Correct.
Right. Not the eternal version of them. That would be so much information, you know, but as they were in the lifetime of the person that you're.
Actually, what's interesting, yes, I do that to give evidence of their human while they were here on Earth. But then the reading always shifts because they've got wisdom. You know, they're a wise, eternal soul.
Oh, yeah. And you're what we call the completed state when you're dead. You have wisdom of everything. From what, you know, my vision of it is that you are all knowing and all seeing in that state as part of source, which we are. So, yeah.
And the brilliance of that is, even though you might have a vision of your grandmother, going to keep on this analogy, David, as your grandmother, her soul continues to evolve. As she continues to be able to give you advice based on her human experience here on Earth, but also from that really higher perspective. So your grandma actually could really give you advice on something you're not expecting, because she has a different perspective. She has wisdom, but she also has that human experience herself. So I'm tending to relay those conversations as a third party, kind of the fifth wheel. But David just channels directly source.
Yeah, yeah. And my experience has been different in that. When did you start receiving this, or when did you become aware of it? How old were you?
Well, like 3. I was really little. But that said, I think most children are really connected, and then we get scared, or we don't have tools, and we need to be a human. We need to really live a human life, and then we come back around to our spiritual side. And to me, I was really called to evidential psychic mediumship versus all the other tools that are out there, to connect with, to connect the discarnate with us, the incarnate humans.
Yeah.
That's my channel, is evidential psychic mediumship. And David, you were called to be a direct channel.
Yeah. And the evidential part, you know, the stream has talked about this before. If you haven't watched the show before, the stream is what I call the consciousness that I channel. I asked for a name years ago, and at one time I was given a name of Philip. This is an interesting story. I was given the name of Philip, and this was around the time I discovered Abraham. That, oh, my guide is Philip, and my entity is Philip, and that's so cool that Philip. I wonder who Philip was. And, and as I progressed with this connection, and it kind of got the information got bigger and bigger and bigger, more zoomed out, as I like to say. I sort of revisited. I said, "You don't feel like a Philip." And the consciousness was, we're not human. We never have been. We don't have a name. We just kind of said that to you because that's what you needed to hear at the time. So they bullshitted the name Philip to me.
Because it was accessible.
This name Philip. But what the reality is that so often, wherever we are as a human being and our awareness of consciousness, of what's beyond physical, we are going to create a reality that we can best comprehend what we're receiving. That's how we see ghosts and see spirits, and that's how we dream. And our minds are brilliant, and they're going to create these scenarios that sort of decode the energetic realm into human terms so that we can process it as a human being. Because the energetic realm is so much more than this little stint we're doing here on Earth. And obviously we're not meant to fully comprehend all of that, so that we can concentrate on having this unique human experience. Without all that knowledge, it would be a blessing and a burden to have all of that eternal wisdom. There would be no point in coming and having this human experience, right?
Right.
Yeah. So I know we're going to get into some really exciting times, because I want to say this is something that I've never done before. I don't know if it's ever been done before. But Andrea, I'm going to, in a little bit, channel the stream, and Andrea is going to go into reading mode, and she is going to do a reading of me in the stream while I'm channeling. And we don't know what's going to happen.
So just to pull back the curtain a little bit on what that might look like, so David earlier today said, "Oh, we're gonna do something different. This is what we're gonna do," and I was like, I can't even get my head around what we're gonna do, because why does the stream need me? They already have a voice. They already have David. Why don't they just talk to you? You don't need me on the phone tonight if we're gonna have me read. And what came to me, I actually tapped into the stream, but not like David does, not channeling. I actually just read them. So I'm going to do this a little bit right now. Let's pretend there's energy coming out of David's head. There's energy coming out of mine. And that's where I'm going to meet the stream up here. And that's what I did earlier today, to be like, what the heck is going to happen? And I was given a pretty clear roadmap of how the conversation would go. So rather than a normal mediumship reading where I'm the only voice for, let's say, David's grandma, and I'm saying, grandma wants to say this, let's ask her this, I'll actually be receiving the questions and the comments from a strand of the stream, and then the stream will be commenting. So I guess it's gonna be like a stream having a conversation with itself.
Yeah, like I said, I don't know exactly. I was guided to let's do something really cool and different. I have noted that one time before, when you and I were on a live just like this, I was not channeling. I was me. And I know when I get into a zone when I channel, and I sort of step back and I can feel their presence, and I sort of let go and let them come through. And then I really don't remember most of what was going on. Well, one time we were on together, and this is the only time in my life this has happened, where I started getting into channeling mode just naturally. It just started kind of coming through that way. And I felt myself sort of balancing the David consciousness. It was really weird. And I haven't done it since. And I know I shouldn't try to force that.
Welcome to my world. That's what I'm doing when I'm giving a reading, balancing that conversation going on in my head.
Step back and just sort of let them take off and do their thing. And I think it helps people that are watching, because you can tell the difference between me and the stream.
Absolutely.
When I start weaving in and out, it might get confusing. I don't know. But, I'm up for anything that sort of flows. It's going to flow. Yeah. It flows. So before we get going, because I think this is going to be so cool and so magical, and I'm not trying to be like, do you remember, oh God, what was his name that did the Al Capone vaults? And then he opened the vault, there was nothing in it.
Oh, yeah.
In the 80s or something. It made such a big buildup. We're opening Al Capone's vault. It's going to be so amazing. And there was an empty wine bottle in there. And it was very anticlimactic. So I'm trying not to build it up too much, because we really don't know what's going to happen. But I think I'm setting an intention to have an awesome experience no matter what. But Andrea, we touched on this a little bit because she didn't go into reading mode so much, but she had some really great questions for the stream on my radio show a couple of weeks ago. And now that podcast, I take my radio show that I do live every week on Home Times Radio, 2 p.m. Pacific every Monday. I take that and make it a podcast. So that is my podcast, the Stream of David podcast. If you haven't checked that out, check out the Stream of David podcast. Andrea is my guest, and we're going to put that podcast out this week. It'll be tomorrow. This week's almost over. So you'll have more of this. You'll actually get her interviewing the stream and us just kind of talking about a lot of stuff. I think it was right in the middle of the George Floyd, the Black Lives Matter protests and stuff, and we got deep into that. It was a really cool episode. So that's going to come out tomorrow, so you can check out the podcast tomorrow. But tonight, we're going to do something that we haven't done before. And I know, Andrea, you've got a new podcast that you're launching, so why don't you tell them about that?
I do, with Katie Valentine and Amy Renee, two other women. Amy is a shaman and Katie is a biblical scholar, PhD. She's absolutely brilliant. She's also an intuitive herself. And so we started talking about these discarnate beings like angels or saints or people that are very iconic in our cultural realm. And like basically people we can't prove, or angels, this other, and we're like, what do we do with these beings? Are they even relevant in modern times? And then we just started recording ourselves. So there is a podcast coming out every week. It's called Magical Mystical Journeys. And you can find that anywhere, Facebook, just on the web or on YouTube. Magical Mystical Journeys. It's launching July 5th, this Sunday. Every episode will take a different being, a different energy, and we'll talk about historically how they've come into our cultural awareness and also what it might mean to us today. And then we'll lead you, any of the listeners, onto a journey with their own relationship with that being. We also talk about all the triggers and all the kind of negative stuff that those beings bring up. So
sounds cool.
Yeah, Magical Mystical Journeys.
Indeed. And one other thing I want you to ask about, if and see what we get over this, because I used to, one of the ways I discovered that I was a channel, in fact, the only way I really discovered it, other than what was coming to me my entire life, I didn't understand it. And I had never heard of a channel. I was always very turned off by religion. I was really turned off by spirituality. I was turned off by all of it. I'm a very, very, very self-taught individual. And I have to sort of go and dig in on my own and find my path through everything in life. My whole life has been like this. So I used to go to psychics all the time to try to understand what I was getting when I was old enough to understand that I was different than a lot of people, what that was all about, what that meant. And I think it's so cool to talk to psychics. And one of the things that one of the psychics touched on years ago, and I've not seen a psychic in years now, was this, can you see it on camera?
He hasn't seen a psychic in years other than me. Yes, we can see that.
I mean, I haven't gone specifically.
I know, I'm teasing you. I'm just teasing. Anyway, yes.
This birthmark, I was told, was because of my channeling ability, was a sign of that. And I'm kind of curious about that because I haven't really explored that with the stream. When I'm channeling them, it's usually for other people. If it's easier for me to get information for other people than for me to get it for myself, I can get yes and no very easily from them.
Right.
Yes and no happens in my body, and it's always spot on instantaneously. Unless I'm really in low vibration, which I rarely am, I can get yes, no in my body instantaneously. And I think that's an amazing thing that I have going on. But that conversational thing is a lot better when I'm channeling. So I'm not always channeling for me, and usually I'm not. So it's kind of one of those things that if it comes up, I would love to hear more about what that's
Absolutely. About. Can I just be funny for a minute? If you had been born in Russia or anywhere in the former Soviet Union, that would be a clear sign that you were the next leader. True. Every single leader of the Soviet Union or of Russia has that kind of birthmark.
Oh, wow.
So David, maybe you're the next Putin.
I could have been the first openly gay leader of Russia. That culture love that.
I just had to be funny with that for a minute. We'll see what the stream says on that.
I have been told that it has significance and it means something, and it is, it's getting darker and
really.
Yeah, and I can actually, there's like a texture. I don't want to get gross, but so I got texture to it. It's getting darker.
It has nothing to do with that Palm Springs beautiful sunlight.
No. It's just for whatever reason, it just seemed as I've gotten older, it seems because it was getting darker when I was living in Seattle, which is the opposite of Palm Springs sunlight.
Yeah.
So
All
yeah,
right.
yeah. I don't think it has a difference when I tan, but maybe it does. I don't know.
That's actually really cool. I'm glad you gave me that because I'm really
Yeah,
happy to
it
ask
comes
you
up.
about
It comes up.
something
It's
personal.
something that
Yeah.
would be a cool thing.
Yeah. Very
Uh,
cool.
and the other question I asked Andrea is, do I have ancestry that are part of the stream? The stream really cannot, it cannot be quantified in human terms. We go back to that Philip thing. There's not a guide for me named Philip. That was something they just kind of threw at me that at the time was the right vibration for what I was receiving. And then after that, we came up with the name of the stream because it's a stream of consciousness. And then oddly enough, when I started my podcast, I called it the Stream of David. And one of the criticisms I had early on of Abraham, the reason I shunned Abraham is I thought it sounded biblical. I judged it as biblical. When you think of Abraham, and of course I love Abraham now, and Abraham was very transformative for me in accepting my own channeling ability and taking that message and really running with it. And I don't listen to Abraham anymore just because I want the stream's message to be the stream's message. But I think it's brilliant, and I wish I had not shunned it for so long, but everything happens in perfection. Well, the odd thing is that I go and name my podcast The Stream of David, and everybody says it sounds biblical.
That's
It's
great.
not a body of water, it's the Stream of David. It's the stream that I channel. So anyway, Andrea, is there anything else you want to cover before I bring them in?
No, I'm ready to go.
Okay. And the link to your upcoming show, your podcast, where are you going to? You're going to have that in your groups?
It's you can just put in Facebook Magical Mystical Journeys. It's also, you can go straight to podbean.com and hit Magical Mystical Journeys. You can also go to iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts and type it in, it's going to be there.
Very good. Very good.
Yeah.
All right, let's do it. We are here.
I wrote that. We're here. That's so awesome. I'm going to start with what I connected in with you earlier and what you gave me very quickly about the topic of tonight. And then I'm going to start with a word that I hear dropping in my head because I feel like that's where you want to start. And then we're going to work with that. So the topic of this episode, of course, is disruptions of people's lives. And why are we so distrustful of disruption? And obviously we're in a state of extreme disruption right now. But this is what I read a little bit earlier from you, that like we assume that disruption is always negative. We always assume disruption is negative. It's almost like you get a divorce and it's like, ooh, that's failure. Or a breakup or changing jobs, or maybe why did you walk away from such a good job? Maybe you got fired. Like it's a failure. Like we just have this in our DNA somehow that any disruption is negative and something bad happened. And if that's something bad happened, then something's wrong with you. And that's what that's kind of where I want to start. But I also have to start with the word that's like pounding in my head and heart, that the most extreme disruption in our physical human frame of reference is the concept of apocalypse. And apocalypse is like, I think we tend to think of as revelations, it's like the end of times. It's like horrible. It's the most extreme disruption. And I just felt even like now my heart is pounding. So I'm feeling like I, first of all, need to start talking with you about disruption and the concept of apocalypse and that extraordinary fear. And we just put that on the table. And that's what I'm getting, that we need to start with, and then we can bring it backwards. Can you tell me what the heck I'm talking about?
the idea of apocalypse is a fear-inducing term where you are being told that the reality as you know it is going to be destroyed, and perhaps there's going to be a difficult and painful time that you as human beings are going to live through if you were not returned early to your completed state. And of course, the harnessing of the power of the fear of death and the fear of pain and the fear of trauma is a very, very powerful tool in your environment that has been used very effectively to build societies, to have you all behave in certain ways that had contrast as far as the positive aspects of your behavior is that you indeed built societies, and you created more human beings, and you created a family unit, and you created commerce, and you created all of the technology that you are using today, and that is the positive. The negative is that it ensnares you in a scenario where you are robbed of your freedom and your joy ultimately, because your joy is derived from your freedom, your love of self, and your trust in the universe to deliver everything that you want and need, regardless of the commerce that is going on around you. The disruption, and you are correct, the term disrupt was considered negative until very recently in your world, where this collective ascension that you are experiencing, there are some, and it very prevalent in the tech industry, very recently began using the term disruption as a positive thing, disrupting an industry and making it better. And it's important to point out that your human lives are a reflection, or a mirror reflection, of the wormhole that is all creation, meaning your personal life and your collective consciousness of humanity, collective lives, and your planet and your solar system, and on from there into infinity, all operates the same vibrationally. Disruption is everything. Disruption is creation. In fact, disruption is the first step in new creation. It creates the grit, if you will, that allows for a desire for something new, something changed, an evolution of. And anytime you are encountering something in your lives or as humanity as a whole, or on your planet, that you do not prefer, in the beginning, it may lower your vibration down into a fear-based reality that seems like an apocalypse or a version of. But ultimately, your vibration will rise, just as your vibration sometimes is pulled down due to polarity. Your vibration will collectively rise due to polarity. And in that rising vibration, you will solve that problem. That disruption will bring about positive change.
I've heard that apocalypse actually means a lifting of the veil, which sounds so much less, violent. It's just a lifting of the veil. And yet when the veil is lifted, you can't unsee what you're seeing. Do you think, first of all, do you think that's a good way to look at it? And second of all, is that where we are right now? Are we in an apocalypse right now?
You are in a version of an apocalypse, certainly. If you had sat and read in the past about what's going on your planet right now in a more what you consider peaceful time, it may have indeed sounded that way. But here you are in it, and by and large, surviving it. And those who are not surviving it are simply being returned to a completed state of wholeness, which you are all going to do sooner or later, and existing in pure positive energy and choosing to come back and do it all over again. So the idea of life and death, the veil that is being lifted, is this veil of fear that humanity is operating under. And this has been going on since you moved out of the forest, if you will, since you moved out of the food chain and began creating shelter and fire and becoming more organized in your communal living and things of this nature. When that started to change, you started to sort of cut yourselves off from what we would call your natural source connection. You started listening to elders and listening to leaders and believing a set of rules that you were given to exist in this society that was created. Even if it was a small village or a handful of humans, there was a society that was created. Of course, that is reverberated out now to create new continents and countries and you have military, and you have government, and you have wars, and you have all of these things to protect all of that. And all of your rules revolve around the promotion of the entity that is the group of human beings that comprise it. Your sexual behavior is very much ruled in a direction of reproduction in a very organized way. So sometimes without contraception and things of this nature that inhibit that is part of the contrast of your modern technology, that you have figured out how to have sexual activity between two humans of the opposite gender and not reproduce a child, even though that is the natural function of that. It's not the only reason for it, certainly, but is a natural function of it. So you're disrupting the natural order of things when you begin doing all of this. The disruption is not something that we judge. We are not judging any of it, because it's important to understand that every time humanity disrupts the natural order, yes, there are both positive and often negative consequences for the disruption, but you move ahead. You advance. You are highly intelligent beings, the most intelligent beings on your planet. And notice that your bodies evolve faster than the other animals on your planet. Notice that your technology is evolving faster than your human consciousness is. Notice that the children born today are up to speed with today's technology, where those of you that have aged a few decades are not. And it is moving faster and faster and faster, and your time is speeding up. Things are moving faster because you are not needing to spend so much time as you used to spend, because it is a more disruptive nature now than ever. But that is not a bad thing. The veil that has been placed over you is a veil of a false sense of reality that is rooted in your behaving in a templated manner, meaning you're behaving the way that you are told to behave. You're told to behave a certain way as a child, and go and get a certain type of education, and go and get a certain type of job, and get into a certain type of relationship, and have a certain type of family unit established, and live your life a certain way, and retire and die. That is the mainstream life cycle that is taught across your planet in different ways. And you are all questioning that, and you are all wanting to disrupt that. You're wanting to lift the veil. And the lifting of the veil on the surface may seem frightening to you, because then you're going to see how things, quote unquote, really are.
Yeah.
How things really are, there's nothing wrong with. There is nothing that's happening on your planet that is going to end that which you are. And lifting of the veil will also lead you to a place where you understand that you do not need to hold yourselves away from contrast, and you do not need to hold anyone else away from their contrast.
That's so beautiful. So I'm just going to speak as Andrea for a moment to our listeners. As the stream is talking through David, I'm also hearing them like give me words. And so if you see me writing, I'm automatic writing, and I need to say what came through as you were talking. And it was like, there, find the safety in the word apocalypse. Find the safety and the concept of apocalypse. If we can get safe with the lifting of the veil, safe, but if we can feel in our souls safe with the lifting of the veil, and the concept of apocalypse, only then can we move forward. Dave, did I interpret that correctly?
The safety is your safety is yours to manifest always, and safety comes down to trust. Okay. And the practice that we have delivered is called trust your abundance, and trust is key to that, because when you trust the universe and you trust the universal process, and you are not dragged down in vibration because something negative crosses your path, whether it is a physical pain or a financial woe or the sudden unemployment or the sudden loss of a loved one even. Your reaction to these things in a human, what you may call a 3D environment, is going to be one of feeling like a victim, of feeling out of control, of feeling pain. And the security of this veil is an illusion anyway. Think about it. There is nothing that's actually giving you security. There's nothing that's keeping someone from walking into your home and murdering you, really. Yet it doesn't happen for the vast majority of you. There's nothing that is keeping you from living under a bridge, really. yet most of you are not. There's nothing that is keeping a deadly virus from entering your body and killing you instantaneously. But most of you are not experiencing that. Your experiences are the sum of your focus, which is very often dictated by fear, but it's balanced because positive is always more powerful than negative. So even though you may have some fears, if you're not letting those rule you, the positive aspects will overtake. Polarity will pull your vibration up and you will move to a place of trust. And in that place of trust, you have safety. You create your own safety via your trust in any circumstance. There's nothing that you can manifest in this world that you are living in right now, this world that you are perceiving right now, that you cannot manifest your way away from, toward safety, toward thriving, toward a better day, if you will. It is available to all of you. You notice your weather patterns. We use this analogy all the time because you all have storms that come through and create some damage. And the storms ultimately cause a refocusing on cleaning things up, building things back. The storms clear out the brush sometimes, and then you bounce back. Your lives operate exactly the same way. The storms that come through your lives are there to make you stronger. And if you choose to have them end your human existence, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that either. But it is your choosing. But in your choosing of that, you are simply returning to a completed state and going to choose to come back and do it all over again into infinity.
I'm hearing from you, I think, and again, if I'm misinterpreting, please correct me, that I'm getting pulled back to what you just said of freedom from pain and fear. Freedom from pain and fear, it sounds like, is trust. It sounds like trust the divine, trust your divine higher self. It doesn't mean you're not ever going to feel pain or feel fear, but you're not going to be so overwhelmed that you can't see your way out of it. Is that correct?
You're going to perceive it differently. You are going to perceive it for the opportunity for improvement that it actually is. You manifest everything that you experience in your world, in your lives, and your negative manifestations are indeed your manifestations from your lower vibrational time. It does not mean that you are specifically setting an intention to have a negative experience. You're not setting an intention to be abused or contract cancer or something of that nature. You go down in vibration, you get a little fearful, you have a little doubt, a little worry, and you begin a path of manifesting some unwanted things. And if you continue down that path far enough, you will manifest things of greater and greater magnitude that you do not want. And the interesting thing about that for you is your judging of it as negative, as bad, something that's happening to you instead of for you, is exactly what makes that experience unsavory for you. It is our promise to you that the lifting of the veil is not going to cause all of you to suddenly sit around and agree with each other and live in utopian perfection. You would be so bored with that, that would be the true apocalypse of your planet. Your planet would cease to be. And every time we share that, we also share that you're nowhere near being in danger of that because you cannot agree on anything. Polarity. And the polarity serves a great purpose. It serves you to create new, to create improvement. We are not guiding you away from asking for improvement, from wanting to manifest something bigger and better. We are guiding you to appreciate the process, continue with your human 3D creations of improvement, but appreciate the process more so that you're not living in such fear of physical pain. You're not living in such fear of illness. You're not living in such fear of financial demise. You're not living in such fear of war. You can overcome all of these things.
The word that came to me from you as you were talking was the word sensation. Sensation, fear and pain and whatever is coming up can be a sensation. Is that correct? It doesn't mean that it has to be. I guess I'm feeling like folks can have fear as a roadblock, end all, be all, we're done. And I'm picking up on cancer. Cancer, it's end all, be all, I'm done. And yet the pain, the fear of whatever we're afraid of can merely be viewed as a sensation. And it can also be a way, that sensation is trying to wake me up. It's trying to get my attention to something. Let's say we have a blister on our foot. And this is all, by the way, this is all being dropped in my head from you guys. It's trying to get your attention to your foot. Maybe if you have a blister on your toe, you need to be paying attention to your foot. So these sensations that arise, we need to be paying, but they're not like a roadblock.
The pain mechanism, and we are speaking of emotional pain or physical pain, it operates the same. The physical pain, of course, in your body can absolutely alert you to something that is going wrong with your body, whether it is an injury or an internal ailment, of course. But something else happened before the injury or ailment ever happened, because those things are manifested from lower vibration. You all go down in vibration. You're all going to have things of this nature. You're not going to move to some perfect place where you are never going down in vibration. There would be no point in that. The going down in vibration and the manifesting of a minor illness, a minor ache and pain, a minor injury, it is a way of getting your attention. You manifest these things for yourselves to grab your attention and point you toward the need to raise your vibration. That you have spent a little more time than your higher self desires down in lower vibration, and your higher self, the soul consciousness that is you, is always pulling you forward. It's always calling you forward through life, and your ego sort of meets up with that and drives you through your lives. And when you keep your egos in balance, they do a very good job of causing you to want to do more, have more, be more, improve, grow, expand, think deeper, and sometimes solve the problems of the world. Although that can be a tipping point when you're starting to want to solve the problems of the world. Are you doing it because you truly are being benevolent, or are you doing it to soothe your own ego? And having an understanding that the problems of the world are the nature of your environment, and that you can absolutely seek improvement and progression, but seeking to completely eradicate something overnight is not very useful, because as soon as you solve one major problem, you're going to produce yet another one to replace it.
I just heard one major problem in individuals' lives is the word stigma. That maybe and maybe this goes back to what I was first talking about. Oh, you get a divorce, you failed. Oh, you're leaving this perfectly good job, something's wrong with you. I'm getting that to come up again now that we've put apocalypse on the table, to pull it back to somebody's everyday life. What is the stigma? What is the word stigma? And what is that's holding us
stigma is
back?
Judgment, and judgment is rooted in fear. And anytime there's a stigma around something, there's a common judgment around it. And if you are concerning yourself with a stigma, you are sticking yourself in that lower vibrational place of concerning yourself with the judgment of others. And that is something that you all have the capacity to detune, where you're no longer concerning yourself with the judgment of others. And when you detune, that is very freeing. That is a lifting of the veil in and of itself.
That's an apocalypse.
It is
oh my gosh.
You're all capable of manifesting in short order, actually.
Do you understand that was such a profound thing that you just said, that most people live their lives through being ruled by stigmas, and they don't even realize it. They don't even realize it until we put it out on the table for them, that's an apocalypse. That's a stigma. You're living by this rule that doesn't serve you. It can go. So it's bringing this concept of, I don't know, like you can bring an apocalypse into your own life if you simply recognize the stigmas that you're actually buying into and putting on yourself. Do you know what I'm saying? You can make this much clearer than what I'm saying.
And internalizing it as self-judgment. And you all do this to some degree. And it is part of the human experience, but it is something that you can detune. And when we speak of zooming out to the higher perspective, zooming out to a perspective of non-judgment of yourselves and of others. And that is not an easy thing for most human beings to do, because you have been so wound up in fear and judgment. And that is by and large how your societies operate at this point, is fearing and judging, which in judgment is rooted in fear. It is all lower vibrational energy. You are not operating in lower vibration all the time, of course, because there are so many magnificent things that you do that stem from higher vibration. The higher vibration is more powerful energy and overtakes the lower vibrational energy every single time. even if it's not in the timeline that human beings prefer, even if it's in a timeline that doesn't work for a specific lifetime. But then you are back to judging how long a specific lifetime should be and how that lifetime should be lived by another. Where the junkie that is overdosing and dying in the gutter is something that most of you would judge as unsavory. Discerning that is not your preference for you is one thing. Judging their experience for them is something different. There's a stigma around that.
You also just said that there's so much high vibrational experiences that are happening to us all the time and we don't notice it.
You tend to focus it. If we say you, we mean humanity in general. We are not speaking specifically to any one person interacting here. Humanity in general is very motivated by the negative news as opposed to the positive news. You notice that you do not have a positive news channel that has much popularity. Speak of a news channel that is complaining 24/7, and they have the best ratings that are possible. So there is that fear mechanism and that anger, which is tied to fear, and that judgment, which is tied to fear, that is very well developed across humanity in the collective consciousness at this time. And that can be detuned. And the veil that is being lifted now is that veil of that lower vibrational control system that is breaking down around you. This is why your governments are crumbling. This is why your religions are faltering. This is why even your monarchies are falling. You're seeing evidence of it all the time. It is escalating day after day after day. And you've manifested the pandemic to shine a light on what you need to change and what you need to question. And many of you are questioning like never before. And the questioning is activating a global awakening. This global awakening is not going to lead to mass consciousness of utopia. We cannot stress that enough. But the global awakening is going to cause the veil to lift. And you're going to see more and more things that if you are living in a 3D fear-based reality are going to be troubling for you. But if you are zooming out to a higher perspective and truly trusting the universe to deliver everything that you want, it is going to be the most glorious time you've ever experienced. Because the lifting of the veil is showing you what really exists on your planet, how things really operate on your planet. And instead of going down the rabbit hole of conspiracy theories and all of these things, you can simply zoom out to a higher perspective and understand that you are creating your bubble of reality. And in your bubble of reality, you can be as safe and joyous and free and abundant as you desire to be.
I'm actually now going to zoom in one step closer to human life. So we've talked of big scale apocalypse, the stigmas, and then this was actually a direct quote from the stream that I wrote down earlier. There is something, we get very comfortable in our discomfort. We spend much time and effort and money creating comfort for ourselves that we slowly work, so much so that we slowly work ourselves into a state of extraordinary discomfort. Meaning that if something over here shifts, we're going to be like, oh, I need to stay comfortable, so I'm going to spend more money and more effort in staying right where I am. And eventually we end up in this really uncomfortable, contorted state in order to stay where we are, rather than recognizing I'm actually quite uncomfortable like this. Rather than risking change, I'd rather stay in the status quo and stay uncomfortable and claim everything's fine, rather than actually finding comfort. So that's, I feel like from you, was why you wanted to start with something big like the apocalypse. Get comfortable with the apocalypse. Get comfortable with stigma. And then realize, are you really in an extraordinary state of discomfort and you're calling it comfortable?
You are all capable of zooming out to a very high perspective and tackling the biggest issues in your lives and the biggest issues across humanity from a higher perspective. And when you tackle the biggest issues first, rather than working your way up to them, suddenly all of these smaller things take care of themselves, if you will.
Totally.
You get clarity on the big stuff. Suddenly the little stuff brings its own clarity. You don't even need
Absolutely.
And so that's why we start with the idea of apocalypse, because some of you believe that you're certainly in a version of that right now and you're not off base, but your world is not being destroyed. Your world is changing, and you are going to see more elements shifting and changing and evolving. And we guide you not to be fearful of this, to understand that you create your bubble of reality. And your bubble can be so resolute that no one, no government, no war, no famine, no financial downturn can penetrate that bubble. And you may think that this is selfishness that we're promoting, and we indeed are, because your personal bubble of reality is the only one that you have control over.
Nice.
Yet you are contributing to the collective consciousness. And if you are lowering your vibration to go and pull someone out of their bubble of reality, then you've got two beings with a lower vibration rather than one with a high vibration and one with a lower vibration. The very best you have to offer another human being, and we say this all the time through David, is to raise your vibration so high that you are setting that high vibrational example and assisting from that space rather than trying to go down and meet another in lower vibration. And you go down when you begin pitying them. And very often your pity is really rooted in your own selfish desire for that not to happen to you. You don't see it happening to someone else because you are really afraid that it could also happen to you. That is your ego kicking in, and your ego serves a purpose. We're not guiding you away from that. In fact, you're only going to release your ego when you die and return to your completed state. Your ego is part of your current human consciousness. But your ego needs to be balanced. And when we speak of zooming out, we are speaking of zooming out to a higher perspective and in gaining the higher perspective wisdom that is available to all of you, and zooming back in to a human experience where you're balancing your ego, you're not fearing as much, you're not worrying about a veil being lifted and fearing negative things and fearing pain and avoiding pain at all costs. And what you touched on earlier, there are many human beings marching this sheep's path of soothing themselves with consumerism and soothing themselves with food and drugs and alcohol and things of that nature. And we are not judging against any of that. We guide you not to soothe your disconnection from that unless you are choosing to do so. In fact, there are many human beings that are doing just that. They're doing exactly what they're supposed to be doing right now for their experience on planet Earth. That if you are here listening to our words, you are here because you want something different than that. You want to go deeper. You want to understand better. And we are here to communicate universal law without the encumbrances of human creation, such as spirituality and science and religion. We are here to communicate universal law as the most raw version of it to all of you, and deliver some building blocks that are human creation that help you with tools to understand your eternal nature and understand universal law and understand what positive and negative are all about, so that you can use it more effectively in your lives. And you start by understanding it from a higher perspective.
You said the word control about 5 seconds after I had written it down and circled it. So it's great. You really touched on that concept of control, because a lot of times we feel, that we have to be in control, but really we're just being in control of everybody around us, not ourselves. And so if we look at what we're
using your tools to tap into our vibration as you do, and you are getting the messages as quickly as David is, and you're writing them down, and David is decoding them and speaking them. And the reason that you hear the stammering and the mannerisms that David exhibits when he is sharing our message, as opposed to how he is in his person, is because the information comes so fast and so rapidly. It's being processed in such a way that it's not coming out as smoothly as it is from his own thought process. There is so much that is being downloaded into his mind that there is a clarity that he cannot find words for very often, of how things truly operate. And sometimes in his most relaxed state, these ideas drop in and he rushes to his device and starts writing and tries to figure out how that's going to work into his next book, where he's sharing what we're sharing. But there is a lot of information, but at the end, universal law is very simple. The things that we're sharing are very, very simple. By concept, very simple. The difficulty comes in you actually, as humanity, applying it in your lives, because you have been fed this diet of fear and control for so long. Detuning all of that is a whole different story. And balancing your ego to such a place where you allow yourself to really absorb it, comprehend it, and not walk away from it because it's too much for you to handle.
I am laughing because I literally, if anybody could see, I handle all the downloads of what I'm getting very quickly through writing, automatic writing a lot. So I might be saying something I'm writing, and then right away you said that's what David starts writing. So I'm just laughing. I have one more question for you. Actually, I just want to I feel like I need to do a recap for our listeners. Get comfortable with the concept of apocalypse. Check your stigmas. See where they are, and then check to see if you are uncomfortable, like comfortable in your discomfort. So I feel like that's the wrap up. But I also have something for the stream for David. And I want to ask, does David have that birthmark on his head for a reason?
The physical attributes that stem from his ability to receive our message, there is some joint pain that he experiences, more so when he was not fully allowing our message. But the joint pain comes in when there is a lot of disruption in his body from the energy flow that is coming, and he can experience that for a little bit. The birthmark that you speak of is absolutely. We shy away from using terms such as energy portal and things of that nature, but there is a more powerful point of entry into his mind where our message is flowing, and that has caused a burning, if you will, of his flesh that is permanent. And absolutely, he feels our entry in the left side of his body, and the left side of his body is what he calls the positive side. When he's getting yes answers, and he is jerking and very often feeling a jolt in his left side. All of this is left side. That is the positive side of his body. What you would call the negative side of his body, or where he gets negative response, will be the right side of his body. And we enter through the positive side of the body and into his brain first and foremost, but his entire left side. There is simply a mark that has been created from the energy that comes in. And he's had a version of it his entire life because we have been flowing to him his entire life. But he is correct that it has gotten more pronounced as he has aged and allows us to flow more. It is not going to progress much further than where it is now because he has gotten so comfortable and accustomed to sharing our message. But you are right that mark is a sign of his ability, and there are others that have something similar. Not many, but there are others on the planet that have something similar at this time, and some are aware of what they have, and others are hiding from it.
Well, I'm wondering, was that actually a physical manifestation in order to allow David to have a physical, literally something physical proof, for lack of a better term? Does it help David?
Something as you look for evidence in what you are sharing, to open up the vibration of the one that you are sharing for. When you present evidence to them, they relax into believing that they are communicating with the one whom you were bringing in. The physical evidence is part of your physical world. There are mannerisms and a way of speaking and a vocabulary that are not present in David normally, and there is a physical attribute as well. And the evidence is more for him. We have said from day one, we are not here to prove anything to anyone. And David has taken on the same attitude. He could care less if anyone believes what he's doing is real or not. He is sharing it for those that are vibrationally aligned with it, that will be helped by it. If somebody thinks that it's nonsense, they are free to think that it's nonsense. We are not here for them. They are not ready for us. And he is not bothered by them.
I have another question, and this is for David, because he asked me right before we got on, started recording, about his ancestry with, I believe, I'm going to put words with it. He did not ask me this. Ancestry with the stream, or with having these capabilities before. And immediately I felt mom's side, like mom's mom. And we started talking about his maternal grandmother. And I told David, I said, I feel like you've got other lineages in you. And I mentioned Native American. And would that be true of David? Would that be, it's probably oversimplified. I'm feeling like right now I'm getting like, oh, that's way oversimplified.
To respond in a simplified manner, we are the core of source energy. We are not a quantifiable being. We are source, but all creation is part of source. And for David's personal stream, there are certainly energies attached that are ancestral, if you will, and certainly the more significant being his grandfather on his father's side, whom he never met, and his grandmother, who was very involved in his life when he was younger, on his mother's side.
Okay.
These two beings are near, if you will. You can pick up on them individually. Right now, our stream is perhaps too powerful for you to hone in on one thing because there's so much. But they are present in this message. The intentionality behind all of this is to share eternal knowledge, not from a human perspective. So those beings' human perspective and what David is sharing isn't really coming into play. Their eternal nature is.
One last thing, because this isn't letting me go. You referenced something in regard to David, but I'm feeling like this really applies to a lot of people. When you said that David actually gets joint pain when there's a disruption in his body, and I don't know, I feel like that is probably applicable to other people, about joint pain and this disruption in your body. Could you just expound on that just a little bit, how that might apply to other people?
When you are wanting something that you're not allowing, when your higher self is calling you forward and you're wanting something from a higher self perspective, not wanting something in a 3D way, the wanting something in a 3D way, wanting a new job, a new home, a new car, a more satisfying relationship, that will cause some anxiety and some self-torture that can lead to a physical manifestation. But the joint pain, quote unquote, from nowhere, very often is a higher self-consciousness calling you forward to release fear and lift the veil for yourselves, and you're not yet allowing it. And in fact, that joint pain can manifest into something far greater, more severe, if you will, in your bodies if you continue down a path of ignoring that higher calling. And most of you are aware of this on one level or another. You've experienced levels of this in your lives. And you are here in realms such as this. We mean realms such as this technology to experience and figure out what's going on with you. And our promise to you is that no matter where you are, you're on a journey, you're on a path that is a path of awakening. You may just be beginning. You may be hearing things like this for the first time, or you may believe that you're so jaded that you've heard it all before and that this is nothing new. These words will land on you at some point, and you will understand them on a higher level if you're feeling that way right now. And that will be a turning point in your awakening when you realize how simple it truly is, and how what you call woo-woo spiritual out there teachings are very often the window dressing that is human creation, that which we have labeled spirituality, that is a human creation. There's absolutely nothing wrong with delving into and using all of those tools. We do not guide you away from any of your human created tools, but understand that it's all grounded in universal law, which is actually very simple. As we said earlier, the difficult thing is unlearning all of the things that hold you away from fully utilizing it.
I just now checked over into the comments. Phenomenal comments all the way through. I don't see any questions for the stream, so I'm actually going to let the stream go. Give David a little bit of a break. I'm sure he needs some water.
This interaction with you sharing, we very much hope that those that are watching it and seeing this in the future understand that this stereophonic, if you will, sharing of our message is perhaps some evidence for you of the purity of it, that you've got two people that do something similar in very, very different ways that are receiving as they do this information. This is available to each and every one of you.
Absolutely.
It is helpful for you sometimes to connect with someone who is more refined in their way of sharing it. But you can quiet your minds and zoom out and get clarity on any topic in your lives. And the little trick that we like to teach everyone on receiving clarity is to, anytime you are making a judgment about something, experiencing something, reading something, and you step back from it for a moment and remove fear and judgment from the equation altogether, and ask yourself how you feel about it once you remove fear and judgment. That is your clarity. And using this practice will change your lives. That is our promise to you. With much love. That is all we have.
Thank you.
Well then.
Wow, that was cool. I have to tell you guys, all of you and David, my hands were like so sweating at the there was at some point, and I wasn't paying attention to the time, but I was just like so on fire. My hands were dripping sweat. I was automatic writing the whole time. If you saw my notes, I looked like a crazy person. Arrows, circles around words, and I would write a word and circle it, and then the stream would say it. That's so cool. I was literally like, let's talk about control. Let's talk about today. Oh, there he is. He has it. And then there was a comment. There was a comment that I was reading over here, and then you answered it. The stream answered it. So I was like, okay, that's great. So just because I'm not acknowledging, specifically all the comments, really appreciate all of them. They're just amazing. So glad to see in real time people's reactions. I couldn't actually do that in real time. I had to wait till we were ending. But really great.
Yes, Amanda said we can free and heal ourselves, and that's the stream has said that all healing is self-healing, and there are people out there that are healers, but a healer is someone who is guiding you to your own self-healing.
Absolutely.
And very often we're guiding people to trust, right?
Absolutely.
Medium, you're guiding people to trust what you're about to tell them, so you give them evidence of it first, and then the good stuff comes after that, right?
And it's always something that's going to resonate deeply. Like, I knew that. I knew it. And it's their deepest desire that they need a stranger to validate for them. Like, I knew that. I knew that deep down in my soul. I absolutely knew it. It's like we're getting back to those core truths, which is what the stream kept saying tonight. Getting back to those core basic truths, but we overcomplicate it because we're involved in relationships and all this constructs and all these complications we've built for ourselves.
Yeah, Michelle said, I think everything is not so much teaching you as introducing you to yourself deeper or higher self. Yes. Yeah. The stream has said before, we like to say the universe is sending us this to teach us this. And actually that's not what's happening. We're going up and down in vibration and creating a mix of experiences for ourselves to teach ourselves. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
Something that keeps coming up, and I didn't say it while you were channeling David, but it's really important for me to acknowledge right now. I live in an urban area, and so I can walk out my door and there's prostitution and drugs right out there. And it's actually, people are really happy. And so one of the things the stream says, you can't judge someone who appears to be a drug addict or appears to be on drugs and chooses to spend the night outside. Some of those people are the strongest, happiest people we've ever seen, and I've learned that firsthand living in where I live, because that is so their experience. That's what they're wanting. And there's no judgment at all. And we can totally coexist. And other people who come in and see that for the first time get really afraid and call the cops, get rid of those people. Well, those people.
Yeah.
They're fine. They're
Yeah, it's funny. I lived in San Francisco before I moved down here to Palm Springs, and we lived right in the city. Of course, San Francisco has a lot of homeless people, and everyone's so concerned about the homeless people, and complaining about them constantly, and the drug addicts on the street, and all this stuff. And the scariest thing that happened when I lived there was a software engineer jumped to their death off the building. He committed suicide. That to me, that was, here's somebody that's living life the way we're supposed to live lives. And they were so unhappy, they decided to jump off the building. And, meanwhile, you've got people living in the streets, but they're doing their thing. And it's not for us to judge.
Right.
And that's the hard thing. And when you see, you do see people that are sort of living their lives the way they want to live it. And we can discern it's not our preference, but it's hard to step out of that that judgment that we're taught. You can, and when you do, it's very freeing. That is lifting the veil right there, not needing to hold others away from their contrast.
And that's the stigma. If we could all carry a little note around in our wallets or purses that says, just discern your preference and let them discern theirs. That's huge. Just discern. Yeah. And if that's existing in your life, it's just letting you know, I'm going to practice discernment. That's not what I want to do with my life. I'm going to go on.
Yeah. A lot of familiar names in here and some good questions, good comments, really. So it was just a really cool interaction, and I can't wait to watch it back because I don't remember much of it, but I do remember glimpses of you having these epiphanies where you're like showing where you wrote down exactly what the stream just said.
Yeah, it was really
That
cool.
would be a very cool experience, right?
Really, really cool. Really
Yeah.
cool. Thank you so much. Oh, and David, in case you don't remember, your birthmark on your head does not mean you're going to be Putin's predecessor or successor, not predecessor.
Oh, I was really concerned about that.
So I know. So you're good. You are not going to be the next czar of Russia. It's all good.
Yeah.
You've got a different path.
Yeah, I didn't know that about Russian leaders all having the birthmark.
There's something about a birthmark or something about something on them. They've all been marked somehow.
Yeah. Mine is really funny though because it's so pronounced and so round. Yeah, it's really weird. Yeah, somebody told me once about, you were shot in the head one time, one of your lives, and
maybe.
Who knows?
You're shot in the head in this life with a lightning bolt of the stream.
It's funny because I don't feel them so much there. I feel them more here.
Yeah,
but that's maybe me bringing my awareness there. The whole third eye thing. Who knows? But anyway, just happy to have them come through, and this was a fun experience. So thank you so much.
Super fun for me.
Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. It was really cool. So we'll have to do one again sometime soon.
Yeah, thank you.
The Stream of David podcast this weekend. Go ahead and subscribe to it. And Andrea is my guest on this week's, which I think will be uploaded tomorrow. And then check out Andrea's new podcast. And what's it called?
Magical Mystical Journeys. And you can also find me at andreasaintamand.com. And the saint is all spelled out. It's AndreaSaintamand.com. Or just Google Andrea Saintamand.
There you go. And you can always find me at thestreamofdavid.com. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.